This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
This is Bill Mankins of Mankins Research, and you are listening to Popping the Bubble.
Hey everybody, Sandra's off doing some Latina geek stuff, so I'm flying solo today, but I have the great pleasure to introduce to you all a very good and close friend of mine, a man named Bill Mankins. And Bill is starting a new university. But why does this matter? Why is he on a technology show? Because he's disrupting how we approach the social problems in conflict zones. Now, Bill and I both have worked overseas. We've worn the uniform. We've jumped out of the airplanes. We've done all that crazy stuff. And we have all the respect in the world for our service members, which we both are service member veterans. But more importantly, what we realized independently and kind of at the same time was that how we approach these extremely complex problems, multicultural, multi-religion, multinational, conflict things that are just the most impossible problems on the face of the earth. You can't just bring a military focus of domination, of imposing will, and assume to create stability. Instability operations are really hard. Pete's first rule of stability operations is you have to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're violating the first rule. The next one is your mere presence creates instability, whether you like that or not. And you have to be able to study these things externally. So you need a guy like Bill to pop in and go, listen, that radio station that you think is creating stability, I can't find stability. And that means you're creating instability. So what Bill seeks to do, and he's going to correct me where I'm wrong, is have a university that teaches our people that will go overseas, military or otherwise, how to look at these problems in a different way. Because how we're approaching it now is fantastic in an older time and a different form of conflict. But what we're doing now is we have to disrupt what we're doing. And so this is a show to talk about Bill's great work, to promote his GoFundMe efforts, to keep his university moving forward. And I absolutely, look, I can vouch 100%. If I had $1 million, I would give it to Bill right now, because I don't need $1 million. He does, because what he's doing is going to disrupt. It's innovation. And dude, I love what you do. I love your approach. More than that, I love your spirit and how you approach life in general. So thank you for what you do. And
well, thanks, Pete.
Yeah, no problem.
It's great to be on, man.
Yeah, it is great to have you on. You know, you're my friend and you're doing something incredible. And all I can do is try to help lift you up and encourage people to believe in you like I do. So tell us how you're innovating education.
Basically in every way, to be honest. And that's not a knock on the way things necessarily are. It's just that for specific needs, we need to do some things a little bit different than what we're doing. So anytime you're going to have a specificity in need in a tailored program, it's going to, by definition, be different than what exists. And so what we're doing is actually totally different. It's different in purpose. It's different in the culture of the institution. It's different in the organizational structure, and it's different in the instructional content in terms of what's taught. I mean, what we're doing here, for those listeners that haven't heard about this, because this is pretty new, is we're creating a university that's going to service specific intelligence and special operations community members. And the reason we're doing that is because of this problem we have at a conceptual level of seeing what's happening. You saw this, I saw this. This was, I mean, almost any uniformed soldier would tell you this. If you go abroad and you go to war zone today and you see some of this, the things that are happening and have happened over the last 15 years, you can have really great tactical or low level successes, just like you could in a tech company or any other kind of environment in which you have a small low level success, but it doesn't fit into a greater strategic plan because it's not aligned appropriately or it doesn't meet the actual context of what's happening around. It's effectively a low level win and an overall loss, or irrelevant. And so, one of the things we want to do is try to connect those high level strategy issues with low level practice and have that alignment occur. So in businesses, I mean, you see this all the time, right? Everyone knows there's the C-suite that buys or creates a software system, for example, or purchases this, and the people at the low end who actually use it every day go, well, if anybody ever bothered to talk to us, we can tell you that that thing isn't going to work here because of the way we particularly do this. So either we need to change all the way we do stuff to meet that system that you just purchased, or we need to get a different system than the one you bought. And that sort of is an easy example of the continuity problem sometimes you have in alignment with that low and high level. And so this university is designed to take people who go to dangerous places and leave bases and have them have that 50-pound brain, minimum 120 IQ kind of and above, see and understand at a systems level what's happening in a given culture in a given place, to make sure that the strategies that we've picked or are picking are in alignment with what actually can be done and can be sustained, and is not only, and it's a win-win, so therefore it's sustainable.
Let me jump in here real quick and then add some color, because I like to be the color commentator sometimes. In business conversations, we often hear people talk about emotional intelligence, and sometimes you hear them talking about culture or cultural intelligence. The problem is those are actual things, actual academic concepts. And if you just talk about them in a pedestrian fashion, then I will tell you right now, cultural dissonance is expensive and it's easy to create. Cultural misaffection and disaffection are easier to create than an actual planned affect off of your culture or your emotional intelligence. So when it comes to cultural intelligence specifically, there's three facets I would say that you have to deal with. One is do you possess the skill to see cultural difference? And that's just see it. And then can you start to work with that? Like, can you say, oh, compare and contrast. I see that everything's written in a different language, so I'm in a different place. That's the seeing it part. And then you start to say, wait a second, these signs all indicate something here. There's more signs in America, less signs here. We're talking about a contextual difference for the people. Like, you start to parse these pieces of information. And then the third step, where the higher level intelligence, where the 20-pound, 50-pound cultural brain comes in, where cultural intelligence comes in, is can you leverage that culture to your advantage? And what you're saying is I'm going to teach people these systems. Like, yes, immerse, see the different thing. Here's a great example. There's a lot of people that are upset about politics. If you can't slow down and understand the other person's point of view, not agree with it, but understand it, you cannot get to the middle in a way that's repeatable and reliable. So we're in a conflict zone where people really have to try hard to survive. There's real danger. And you come in and you're like, my commander says you have to do this. That will get you nowhere.
I'm going to riff off what you just said there, Pete. So in that same way, there are kind of two aspects here. One is the training about where you can go, and the other is what you can see. So there's that, that old saying, if you want to do what I do, first you have to be able to go where I go. That involves sort of this, like, if you want to go to dangerous places, you need to have the skills and experience and understanding to go to places like that in the training. But then even if you can get there, which our special operations and intelligence communities are great at training people to do that. But if when you get there, you're not able to see what I see, then we're actually looking at and experiencing two different things. And even though it's the same thing, because it's so different, we're, for all practical purposes, seeing a different view of reality. Yes. And therefore can't come to a unified or a coherent and appropriate solution. So it's sort of like, you think about when you have maybe a foreigner who's never seen an American football game, who goes to a game and watches it, who just sees bodies running into each other with no understanding of the rules and how things work or what the goal is or whatever else, and all of a sudden just sees people jumping up and down and cheering for, who knows what reason. And then you take that person and you look at a college coach, or at least even take a fan who watches the game, but maybe never played or did play, but played at a lower level. And then you watch a college coach. They all experience the same game. They're watching the same thing, but they're seeing it with totally different eyes. That college level coach is seeing everything from the low tactical level stuff about how players are aligned with their feet or whether they're rocking on their hands, and all these little tells that if you know the tells, you know what's going to happen, or you have clues about what's going to happen because they understand it at that low level. And they understand at a higher little level, down in distance, the opposing team's tendencies that they've studied. And maybe they studied over time and years of doing it. So when you look at this, it's not only the tactical stuff of can you go where I go, but it's can you see what I see when I get there? And unfortunately, the higher education system, and I'll say even the national security system, does two things. It has, when you graduate from high school, it's sort of like, here's the grand cog machine, okay, with all these various cogs, meaning the jobs, right, of what you want to do. And you can either go directly there with, if you've got some kind of trade or skill, or maybe you need to go to college to do that, if it's to be, the lawyer or to be the doctor. But whatever it is, there's usually a relatively clear pipelines or historical pipelines, pathways that have been set up to get you to whatever cog. In the case of the military or the national security establishment in general, those ways can be through ROTC on the officer side or military academies or OCS. If you're on the enlisted side, you can just join right out of high school. Sometimes you get people that enlist like I did after getting a master's or bachelor's degree, but it's not very common. In other words, what I'm trying to say is the force that you get is not predicated on the knowledge that it knows. It's there to train people to do something and to go places. And all the military training, for the most part, is all about can you go where I go, right, as opposed to can you see what I see. And the strategy people, okay, oftentimes don't even get the can you see what I see, because they either get it in the silo of the academy, because very few actual parts of the academy have practical field experience like anthropologists do, for example. So when you're looking at foreign places that are truly foreign because their premises, their entire functions of their social systems are different than ours, you can't just roll in there untrained and be expected to see, like that college coach can, what's happening in the game. And so what we're doing at this university, and why it's totally different, is the purpose is to create this hybrid place for this hybrid person who has the capacity to physically go to these places and has the brain power and the training and the focus, right, and the mentoring to be able to see these places in ways that a PhD level anthropologist does. But also has the mindset and understanding of the defense and strategy needs. And so, it's sort of like a marriage counselor in a way. I don't know if you experienced this yourself, Pete. I'm sure you did. But when people oftentimes you see two people arguing, and they're arguing right past each other because they can't even get to figure out whether if what they're arguing about is really substance or if it's more just form.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. So let me jump in again and slow down and try to break down what you said a little bit. I'm going to be even more bombastic in saying you are definitely talking about alternate realities, right? And so if Bill has a bubble and Pete has a bubble, our bubbles are similar, but they're different realities. Now you take Ali Salim, and his bubble is completely different. He doesn't go to Starbucks. Like we often come in with these solutions from the strategy people that are beautiful. Like, hey, we're going to create economic livelihood. We're going to loan money. We're going to do small business loans. We're going to give things away so you guys can get up on your feet. And all of that stuff at the strategy level is beautiful. But it's just not possible on the ground if you come and bring a solution and you haven't even spent 5 minutes trying to understand what the problems are. So the military is great at training you how to work and operate within its bubble and its sphere of influence. And the overall theme is a theme of imposing will. And that's a good thing. The military is supposed to impose its will on the enemy. Now we're asking the military, without training, without any kind of tactics, to accomplish economic growth in a place where you can't even get tribes to come together to settle multi-generational tribal conflict. Like, wait, hold on. Wait, what did you just say? Multi-generational tribal conflict, because there's been very little stability and there's been a lot of death of men. The elders are dying with things unresolved. Imagine if we got rid of probate court and we just started settling shit by ourselves. And then dudes from another planet show up and say, hey, here's a bank. Here's 1,000 pounds of bananas. Let's start you a banana store. So that's a totally different reality. And if you can't if you can't get into here's what I do when I go overseas, and I think this is kind of similar to what you do, Bill, and how you approach a problem. I have to, and I know the inside the military bubble. I speak commander, I speak CEO, so I can go in there and say, these are your intents. This is what you're trying to accomplish. These are the operations that you're doing. Let me go look at the tactical benefit, and I look for it in an alternate reality. Because the people in the staff room, the people doing the operations are not trained to cross into another reality, and it just isn't like our reality at all. And then I bring that truth back, and I have to negotiate. One, I have to establish trust internally in the military side. I spent all my time, way over 60% of my time, working with and creating and establishing influence and trust on the military side. I really spent the bulk of my time there, because if I can't get the military to slow down and stop imposing its will, we can't help the villagers. So the work really is for me there. And then I've got to go on the other side into a completely different reality and say, if you guys will trust me, I will take your message over to the other side, and we will start to see the military do less things, but be more effective towards what you guys want.
Yeah, I mean, it's your framework. In some ways, you're sort of a perspective, and actually a lot of ways, you're a perspective and framework translator.
Yeah.
And again, you see it in businesses from high to low, or from, if anybody's ever worked with a true, like, stereotypical tech coder kind of person, right? I mean, let me give you a little story that will illustrate even better for your particular listeners out here. So for what we're doing, we have a tech IT system that we're designing from the ground up that kind of incorporates SIS, student information systems, and learning management systems, the LMS, and some other things that a university has, but we need them for our purposes integrated in a way that doesn't exist, and kind of like times 10 in terms of capacity. So a few years ago, when I started this aspect of it, I went and got a couple interns. Because, when you don't have money, you have to work with what you can get, and you've got to inspire people to work for free. So I got 3 interns who were really smart, masters of computer science, all 3 from India. And they were wicked smart people. I had never worked with true, we might say, techie coder types before. I'm a very concept and vision person, and had no idea, because this was my first time working with this kind of project, I just thought I'd get really smart people and get them to do it.
Right.
And I could explain it to them. They would just run with it. And your listeners are probably laughing right now because they know the experience. But, for me, I thought it was going to be really that simple, because we're going to go here, and we're going to do that, and this will be easy. And then you guys know how to do it. So hand jam it and make it happen. And I very quickly realized what the quality and value of the person who can effectively translate between the true, like, pure coder tech person and the uninitiated, doesn't know anything about it, more conceptual person. And that role, it was effectively, an exact model of the role that you and I play in a war zone. But I would also add for your listeners, sometimes people think of this as being solely a war-based focus. But the interesting thing, and why we're particularly focusing on the intelligence and special operations communities, is because they're in places where it's pure peacetime. It's easy for the public, because they see what happens on TV, to be thinking about, like, oh, well, we just go where there's war.
Right. No.
The whole idea is to help prevent wars.
Yeah.
And prevent misunderstandings that lead to wars.
There's a whole concept of phase
no
zero. I'm going to jump in. There's a whole concept called phase zero operations, and everything that's what we call left of boom. And we're constantly operating in that space, and it is a peacetime space. And I want to add one little color piece for what you're saying. These systems, these dynamics, these interpersonal things, the people on both ends, the tribal dude and the person who went to West Point, the person from the State Department that went to the Kennedy School of Government, these people are all highly educated, highly skilled, and they're great at what they do. But what they do has no correlation to the opposite reality they're trying to impact. The villager, do not underestimate the villager's ability to survive in an unstable place, because they will outdo you. You will be dead on the side of the road and forgotten, and they will still be going because they are great at that. So the people we're talking about interacting with are brilliant. They're wonderful, but that go-between, that person that can look in terms, again, of systems and say, like, so I look at, when I encounter a new group, a new tribe, a new village, whatever it is, I'm looking for their cultural decision-making process. How do these guys make decisions? Because we'll come in and we'll say, hey, I'll see you here tomorrow at 10. And that ain't going to happen. They're like, no, you're extracting trust from a relationship that has no trust bank. And so you have to come in and say, how do you guys make decisions? Well, we have to have the right elders here. Who are those elders? I'm not going to tell you that yet. All right, let me build some trust. And then that's where the work begins, right there, is how do I establish trust? That's a systematic approach to this. So like, wait, I have to establish trust to be able to meet the commander face to face? Oh, same thing. It's two different systems. Why would I navigate this system differently than I would that one? Like, all the time. And I know you've experienced this, Bill. The Army will show up. And I'm saying the Army, I really mean the U.S. person, the element will show up. Just show up. Hey, how's it going, Mohammed? I'm here unannounced. I want a meeting for the next 5 hours. Like, what the fuck? Dude, you can't do that. And you're going to feed me and my 20 friends. It's like you're a biker gang influencing your will. And so I always say, look, the system was the same. Like, if you want to go meet with a chief ministerial person for an entire state. I live in California. Let's say that you wanted to go to the Department of Education, the top person in the state of California. You wouldn't come in unannounced. You wouldn't get in the front door. So how would you do that? You would say, I would like to set up a meeting, with this person. How do I go about it? And then you work through that system. But we forget, we're not trained. It's not because anybody's dumb. We're not trained in these cross-cultural, cross-system situations.
Yeah, there's some great kind of literature, on this. So if your readers or listeners aren't familiar with this, I mean, I would really encourage you to think about picking up a copy of Cultural Intelligence from David Livermore. I mean, they do a lot of what's commonly called CQ now. It's a huge and emerging field about basically whether you're a business person or a government person or a military person, or just pretty much any field. When you're dealing with, quote, the other, people that are not like yourself or systems from yourself, and that could be going to Appalachia, right? Or that could be a rural person going that could be, I mean, I don't want to go down the political road here, but that could be different sides politically who have been clashing about understanding that it's not about whether you agree or not. It's about the capacity to decode and understand the signs, symbols, and systems of other people and other things that are foreign. And those could be domestically foreign just as easily as they could be internationally or ethnically or linguistically foreign. I highly recommend, as a basic sort of hop in for anybody who hasn't, Donella Meadows' book called Systems Thinking. It's a great introductory text to, and it's easy to read, about what I'm talking about when I talk about systems thinking. And it's the capacity to break things down in systems and understand them. That is unfortunately something that is just not taught in any of the K through PhD systems. There's some small little sectors that it's discussed. MIT Sloan Dynamics Group is kind of where it came from. So there's certain tech people that talk about this way, or systems engineering, but rarely is it applied to social systems in the same way. So that's one of the key things that we're doing, and there's sort of that, and that overlaid with the cultural intelligence system that is really useful.
So we're talking with Bill Mankins from Mankins Research, soon to be Mankins University, a degree granting organization, and we're talking to him because he's disrupting how we do conflict, how we do pre-conflict. He's disrupting how we teach ourselves. Look, STEM is important and it has its place. But I would submit that if everybody in a conflict zone has a STEM degree trying to help a bunch of people that don't, you have to have someone that has a Mankins type degree to be able to come in and effectively navigate alternate realities. And just the concept, when you say to a STEM person, we have to navigate alternate realities, you can't say that. They won't listen to you. They can't understand it. You have to slowly break down, like, look, you're bringing a hockey team to an archery competition. You have to, right? Like you've got wonderful people, a dream team of hockey players, but we're shooting arrows from horseback, and you're going to have to slow down, and maybe you'll get there. Maybe you'll be great at that, but you don't just come in and start freezing things up and skating on them,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, to do that, in a way, let me back up here even a little bit further. In a way, what we're doing, the easy metaphor to try to explain to people is, and I don't mean this in any kind of arrogant way here, but what we're really doing is like what Elon Musk and SpaceX are doing with NASA, which is, let me be clear, we're not replacing any of the academies. They're doing awesome stuff, and they are servicing about 90 to 95% of the officer community very well. What we're doing is a very niche thing, and it's different, and it's for a different purpose. And so in the same way that NASA has great things, really smart people, and no one's saying they're terrible, they're just, because they're government and there's other things that are happening, they're slower and can't respond the same way. And when you've got somebody who sees a system for what it is and has vision for doing something, and then you need to be outside the system to actually build it and make it happen efficiently, rather than try to do it inside. So, people have asked me a lot of times with this, well, we already have military academies. What do you need one for? And my response is, well, it's only kind of a military academy. Frankly, in more ways, it's a paramilitary academy. And that meaning para, not in the James Bondy sense, but in the quasi-military sense. Just to give you an example, one of the things that when you graduate from West Point, you go in the Army and you go in as an officer, it's a guaranteed done deal. When you go to Naval Academy, you're going in as a naval officer in the Navy or in the Marine Corps. That's it. If you're in the Air Force Academy, you're going to the Air Force as an officer. What we're doing, because we're creating and forging a certain kind of mind, right? Who has a physical capacity to go to these places that are military places, and to go out by themselves and to work with the units on the fronts, as opposed to work on bases where most officers actually work. The public might not know this so much, but most officers and most enlisted don't actually go deploy. But even those that do deploy stay on bases. And of those that actually go outside, they're just very, very few. And so we're focusing on those people who actually go out and engage with local foreign peoples, and therefore have a capacity to understand this. The standard running joke is people say, "Oh, have you been to Afghanistan?" And most people and I say this in air quotes, haven't actually been to Afghanistan. Right. They've been inside of an American facility in the country. So they can look outside like people do at a zoo, right? But they're not actually there. They're not in the wild, if you will. They're not in the natural environment. They're in a protected, controlled environment, like being in a better example is like being in a house with an air-conditioned room, looking out in the desert. You're not really in the desert. That's not diminishing what someone's doing. And I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form. What I mean is the curriculums that are designed are not designed for the people who actually go out into the place. What's taught at a university and what occurs as an academic degree is not actually designed for what somebody does professionally. Since we look at, in the intelligence and special operations community, look at this is a profession, right? Our military is not a draft military. So therefore, people who are there are professionals by definition. A curriculum needs to reflect a tailored curriculum for people who are going to places like that and interacting that way. And so what we're doing is offering this, creating this system. We're also doing it so all the research that we're doing at Mankins Research is designed to do two things. One, it's to help existing academies modify a small portion of their curriculum to meet the needs of these actual, what I'll call warfighters or operators, because not all of them are fighting war, right? They could be intelligence people or whatever else, and it could be in a place where there's no war, in that, what we talked about before, that phase zero time period, before there's ever a conflict. But the point is, they are out there, okay? They're out in the desert, they are out in the jungle, they're out in the town, they're out off of a base, interacting with local people in local ways, trying to decode what's happening around them, and therefore come up with viable strategies to get win-win situations between local people and the United States government. And so by creating a curriculum that's very much tailored to those people, those small minority of people in the entire national security establishment. So I'm not just talking military, I'm talking NSA, I'm talking CIA, I'm talking other I'm talking State Department even. I'm talking places where people go and interact. Those people need that hybrid of, yes, I can go there, and yes, I can see what you see, and I can do these things because I have this kind of training. When our graduates graduate, they can go at either sort of a vertical example. They can go become officers, or they can go be enlisted personnel. There are some advantages to being enlisted. Everyone thinks of officers, but frankly, officers to a large degree are managers of Defense Department. They're not actually the people, for the most part, who go out and do the thing, except when they're very young and very, very raw as a junior officer. So, and I'm speaking in broad generalities here.
Sure.
for your listeners. So we are going to create a situation in which if people want to go be the sort of sled dog and really love being out and doing that, and that's the career they want, they don't have to, when they graduate from our academy, they don't have to go be an officer and only get 2 to 4 years of actual operational thing before they're stuck behind a desk managing.
Right.
If they want to do that, they can keep doing it. So we allow the vertical officer or enlisted option. We also allow a lateral option, which is they can either go into the Defense Department, and if they do, they can pick any of the branches they choose, or they can go outside of the Defense Department and go directly to work for any of the other intelligence organizations or State Department. So the civilian aspect is open as long as it's in an intelligence role or a special operations role, because those specific roles are the ones that are constantly in the field connecting this issue. So we're providing that amongst military academies and military higher education. That pipeline that we're creating is unheard of.
Right.
It doesn't happen. Those options and placing that power in the students' hands to find out where they want to go and where they want to serve.
Let me slow us down.
The American public.
I'm going to slow you down for a second here and back out and let's talk to the audience a little bit. Any of you right now can put your hands on a keyboard within seconds or on a phone within seconds. If not immediately right now, already have it in your hand. The world we go to does not exist like that. So, one, don't underestimate the intellect and professional nature of the military. For those of you folks who aren't in, this isn't meant to be insulting. It's very hard to know. But when you go into a staff room of a brigade, there's probably 3 PhDs in that room, and they're all wearing uniforms. There's several people there's at least 10 people that have peer-reviewed published articles, editorial board reviewed published articles. There's a lot of development that goes in. I mean, when Bill says these are professional people, there is no doubt that if you are in that staff room, there's probably 50 to 60, maybe even 100 people in there, depending on how they run their show. There is a lot of intellectual power there. These are not gun-running dummies. These are very, very smart people. And they struggle to solve the most simple, basic problems, not because they lack capacity. It's because the challenges and then the lack of tools, like Bill's talking about, to be able to go out into these different environments. These same problems exist in the corporate world. I'm looking at right now at the numbers for engagement of employees at work. You're talking about a cultural dissonance problem here, right? Most people admit they are not actively engaged at work most of the time. The numbers are like 70 to 80%, depending on whose survey you look at. So you're talking about serious cultural dissonance because it's really challenging to live in several different worlds. Like you said, these people that go to Afghanistan, like I've been to Afghanistan, that's great. I've eaten goat curry for 100 days in a row. I've been a place where a helicopter cannot fly. It's too far. The only help you're going to get is something besides, and helicopters can go forever. You are really out there doing things and trying to understand complex problems. And what you're proposing is a degree that needs to happen. The ability to talk to elders, to talk to military people and say, here are the things that are working. Here's where you need to slow down. Here are the things that I see. So I'm going to give a quick example. Mm-hmm. As we try to create stability in a place like Afghanistan, and we can insert country here, whatever that country is, where we're worried about their stability, somewhere in Africa, you want to talk about Mali or whatever it's going to be. If Pete goes out with his independently, somehow I developed skills that the Mankins University is going to create. If I go out and I go a quarter mile from the government center and I say, what do you guys do if someone gets murdered? And they say, we handle that in-house. Well, what do you do if someone gets hurt? Oh, we go over here to this witch doctor guy. What do you do if you need to hire employees? Well, I go to my cousins. Will you ever hire anybody outside of your family? No, I will not. What value is the government to you? The what? the government, that guy who works in that building over there, that guy owes me money. He bought a goat and didn't pay for it. When you take that report back to a commander, you say, you're not creating a rule of law. You're not creating medicine. You're not creating stability. You're not talking to them. They are not seeing the government in any way, shape, or form. One, it's really hard to see that. Two, it's very difficult to gain that conversation and that trust. Three, you have to deliver that message to a machine that isn't programmed to receive it. Four, you have to get the commander to say, this message is genuine. I want more of it. And I want all of you guys to pay attention to how we do things here now. Because what this one guy says, what Pete says, and he points at me, we are changing the nature of what our 5,000 person organization does. And we're going to go away from combat. Right? This is not a military solution. This is a people solution. And we're going to follow more of what this guy says because he's getting to the essence of the problem. That is what Mankins University is trying to create. Let me ask you this, Bill. When you are setting this up, obviously there's expenses. You have a GoFundMe thing. What are you asking people to donate to? Like, what are you asking for specifically?
So here's the way this is working. So people can kind of get an idea of where we're at and where we're going. You can't just click your heels and say, we're starting at university, both from a monetary standpoint, organizational standpoint, and frankly, an accreditation and all of the legality standpoint too. And it's a major undertaking, but you got to start somewhere. Let me give you a short timeline, and then your listeners can see where we've been and where we're going. This idea generated when I was in Afghanistan originally back in 2010, when some 2-star generals pulled me aside and said, hey, we love what you're doing. How do we find more? And the answer was they couldn't. And they couldn't, not because I'm special, but my background and my learning and the things that I've done were not on purpose. They were on accident. And as a result of things that I didn't choose.
Same.
What I realized with their questioning, as we talked about it in a meeting one time, was there's no system designed to produce what the people that are needed in this small niche capacity. Okay, this is where, again, we're only talking a small area, but there's no system to create those kinds of people, that attracts those kind of people and then develops those kind of people. So you end up with success on accident, not because there's a system for it. So then I started thinking later, after I came back from a couple of those deployments, I'm like, how do we do that? And for me, this came an obsession because, and I do mean an obsession because, it truly was, and I realized I totally shifted the gears of my life. For a long, long time, in fact, my whole life, I was obsessed with trying to be the guy, right? The guy who could speak 5-7 languages, the guy who could fly airplanes and helicopters and dive,
I know
and
that
do all
guy.
this kind of stuff. Yeah, right. To be that guy. I mean, obsessed. And one day, I won't go into the story now, but one day I was in Afghanistan. I just had this epiphany over the course of 6-7 months that, oh my gosh, I have to make a decision and I have to do it quickly. Like, am I going to continue to try to be the guy, or am I going to try to be somebody who creates a new system that can help produce the men and women that can do these kinds of things? And I decided to stop chasing the dragon, so to speak, make something that lasts longer. And so, and that outlives me and my life and actually can have meaning and help bring more peace and stability, and more accurately identify courses of action with real enemies.
I want to jump in. I want to say this too. I've felt the same thing where I knew what to do. And I had the confidence to go into a commander and say, you don't know me. You're going to put me under some captain and I'm going to do work. And in 3 weeks, you're going to see what I do and you're going to understand its value. In 3 months, you're going to look at me and you're going to say, Pete, I could not have done this without you. You're the most valuable asset I have. And then you're going to invite me to sit on the couch and talk to you whenever I want. And it's going to be invaluable to you. So I'm just going to go work. But understand that when that time comes in 3 months, you don't got to say it. I already know it. And they would look at me, because commanders love audacity. They'd look at me and it's like, there's no problem. Like, there's no, like, either I'll do it or I won't. And every time I would do it, because I had a system set up. But what I didn't have, I didn't have more of me. I'm like, how do I replicate what I do? And I would try to teach other people, but it just, there has to be a degree for this. And this is why your GoFundMe is so important. Like, let's help Bill get between this point and the next point. The day-to-day tactical money is really what you're after. You've got the great board members. You've got people at the highest levels paying attention to what you're doing. I mean, it's not just generals. There's real heavy hitters saying, Yeah, we've got our support. You've got a board of people helping you make decisions on how to do these things. So this is what we're going after with this GoFundMe is let's help keep the lights on while you're building this incredible thing that's going to save American lives. But more importantly, it's going to create stability that's going to help us accomplish strategically what we're not able to do tactically.
Yeah, I mean, that phase, I mean, after spending 5 years, almost 6 now, really talking with experts and honing the system, the prototype, how does it work? Finding out and picking people's brains about, well, here's the constraints, here's what I want to do, how do we do it? And really honing it sharp. The next step, is, okay, you got to develop an organization that can bring it to fruition. That is to say, to actually go out and build the prototypes and build the models and build the thing. So there's, the phase we're in right now is we literally just got our 5. Since we talked, you and I did a podcast before on the Break It Down show. Mm-hmm. And that's where I kind of first talked about this. What was that? April, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And since then, we did get our 501c3 status. So we're a legit nonprofit at this point, and we can give, tax deductions and the like to do research on higher education and national security. And that's what we're doing. And the research we're doing is putting together all the models, the templates, the structure, the prototypes, all of these things, and building them into fruition. So what do we need to do that? We need $1 million to build all those things. That's step one. But before you can get to step one, we've got to get $50,000. So just due to things that I don't want to go into right now, the IRS has a rule about, because the time that we applied and got our stuff in mid-year, we are only allowed to accept $50,000 in 2017. So that's our goal. That's why we're not saying $1 million right now. But in 18, we need to raise $1 million. So effectively, we're looking for people to donate anything. I don't care if it's $5 for a beer or whatever. They can donate to the cause here. Because once we have the prototypes on board, that's where we're going to go and transition from our current existing board, which is designed to be the kickoff board, right? They know exactly what their objective is, where they're supposed to go with it. And then the board that's going to replace them once we have the prototypes done and everything else, and take it from that level to the next level and pass off the baton. We need 2 things. 1, knowledge, expertise, and 3 things really: knowledge, expertise, and people that know these kinds of things, because we can always take more knowledge and we can always take more expertise. 2, we need people to be able to sit on the board, and we're right now that the board we're going to be creating that's going to take the baton. 3, which is what we need right now, is we need your support. You're donating to a nonprofit that's going to create a 10x improvement in national security education. But what you're really getting and what you're really doing is funding the full spectrum development of your future leaders. And that's where you can have your impact. If you don't like your leadership now, or you're not happy with the way things have gone in the last 15, 16 years, it's easy to complain about it. Here's an opportunity to do something about it and to help create future leaders who really can see things for what they are with the greatest granularity and resolution to make better strategies for the United States, support our men and women who are risking their lives.
There's only so many of us, and I look for people like us all. I only know a select few that really understand how to do this. And what you're talking about, Bill, is a game-changing thing. It's disrupting how we approach national security, international relations, all of these things. It's the leading edge. It's where things are going to go. So thank you very much for coming on. Please do what you can to support Bill. If you have any questions, absolutely come talk to me. I'm glad to. I will get you contact with Bill so you can understand from him. But we are talking about the same things here. Let's give these guys who go out in the hardest places on earth and try to solve problems to make everybody a little safer. Let's help these guys out and get them an education that supports that, because like Bill, I found mine by accident, just through making a crap load of mistakes. We need to amplify the voice on what to do and how to get there. So dig in. You don't got to go too deep. $5, $10, $100, $1,000, whatever you've got that you can spare. Bill is a trustworthy guy, someone I have literally put my life into his hands, and I'm positive he would say the same thing about me. So I cannot give anybody a higher endorsement than I would put my life in your hands and surrender it to save yours. And that's the kind of guy Bill is, and it means a lot to me that you guys support him.
Oh, thanks, brother. Appreciate the comments and the support. I really do. You can follow me also on LinkedIn and Twitter as we update various things. So we appreciate your support.
Yeah, and you can get me at Pete A. Turner on Twitter, Facebook. I'm easy to find. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Same thing. Bill is Bill Mankins on LinkedIn. Definitely feel free to reach out at PeteATurner.com. I'm glad to talk to you about this. We're going to put the link to the GoFundMe site on the website for Popping the Bubble, which is Popping the Bubble with no E at the end of bubble.com. And again, thank you so much, Bill, man. I really appreciate it. It's a great show. You did a great job. Take care, everybody.